So it seemed like that the first video I made like this got much better responses than I expected, so I thought I could make more of them. But I didn't want to make them like just talking about a random topic to the camera, because you may already notice that I'm not good at this. So what I thought I'm gonna make instead is, because I call these videos random stuff, I just gonna do random stuff, like talking about project updates, make smaller stuff, and what I also thought I could do is answer some questions out of the comments of some of my other videos. So that's what I want these videos to be like. And I guess that's it. Let's get started. You probably have seen my hand tool wall in some of my other videos. And most of the holder designs are inspired by this guy. And I really like them. Everything is within sight and reach and very well organized. I always know where I can find which tool. The only thing I don't like is the layout I made. Here is about the area that I can reach easiest. And everything I need mostly is in this area. For example, the drills, the bits, the screwdrivers, pencils. But the chisels, which I also need very often, are not in this area. But the fastener bits, which I don't need all that often, are. So I think I'm gonna change the layout slightly and make this wall more efficient. So I think I'm gonna move the fastener bits right to here. Then this small space left here is gonna be for the bits. And this space here is then used by the chisels and these random things. Well, I had to move quite a bit more pieces than just these 4, because you always have to take care of that you provide clearance for everything to work. So I can't put anything above these screwdrivers. Or for example the pliers, they also need some space above them that I can take them out. But now I think everything should work again. Last thing missing is the layout of the fastener bit sizes. And this is something you're really gonna take advantage of, because you always know which size you have on hand. And I also made this for my hole saws, that I also know which sizes are the hole saws. And I never have to look on the saw itself or measure. I guess time will tell if it's more efficient than before. But as I have this breadpoint drill index, which I want to make a holder for someday, I think I have to move stuff again anyway, so for now this should work. Then, as I already showed in my last of these videos, I have some walnut logs that I want to turn into bulb lengths. And I asked if you want to see this in a form of a video, but the response to that wasn't really big at all. So I thought it wouldn't be worth the effort and making a full video with my music editing style that I do for the turning videos and all that stuff, so I thought I could do it now.
I took them all off the pallet that I was storing them and laid them out in front of the house. Then I took a little brush to clean some of the dirt as well as the spiders and other insects. And while I was doing that, I remembered that I had also some pear logs stored somewhere else, so I took them out as well and then brought everything into my shop.
Now that I get all of them in my shop, I can start to prepare them, and I usually begin with cleaning them with a wire brush. Now that all pieces are cleaned, I next need to cut them into circles. What I need to do is to find the center, and I'm just doing this by connecting the corners.
So here's my rough center. But what I also take care of is the grain pattern, because here this grain pattern looks more interesting and beautiful in the end than this part here. So I'm gonna offset the center a little bit to this side, so that I have more of this included in the final bowl. And then I just drill a hole there. This hole is later going to be the pivot point for my circle jig on the bandsaw. But when I have a odd shaped piece like this, it's a little bit hard to find the center. I could just eyeball it, but there's also a method you can use. So I just take a compass and set it to a random radius. Then I set it to some points on the piece and make some marks. I then end up with an area, and the center is within this area. And so when the center is in here, this will give me the biggest possible bowl out of this odd shaped piece. Next we have to cut these circles out on the bandsaw, but if you watched my video about preparing the apple bowl blanks, then you maybe remember that my blade for this job broke. And I contacted the manufacturer about this, because this blade was only 3 months old, but I didn't get any response. So then I thought a little bit about it, if I should take another blade from another manufacturer, but I really liked this blade. So I got myself a new one from the same manufacturer, and when I ordered the blade, I wrote down a note and explained the problem that I had with the old blade. And then when the order arrived, I got a second blade for free. Quite a good redemption, I think. The circle jig that I have is really simple. It's basically a plywood board with a hardwood runner for the miter slot of the bandsaw. And on the top I just screwed on some laminate flooring to make the wood glide easy on that. And these pieces have a dovetail groove in them. And then I have multiple inserts that of course fit in this dovetail groove. So I can adjust the radius from really small to really big. And once I have the right radius, I just lock it down with this knob. It's also important where the pivot point is in this direction. It should be in line with the back of the teeth. So if you just look over it like this, with the blade cover removed, from the back of these teeth to the pivot point should be one line. And it pretty much looks like it is. And to always have this correct setting, I have an adjustable stop lock on the extended miter bar, and it stops on the table of the bandsaw. And this gives me the exact same pivot point position each time. So now to set this jig up for cutting a bowl blank, I take one of the blanks and measure the smallest amount from the pivot point to the edge. And that seems to be, well, a little less than 15 centimeters. So now I set this distance on the jig and lock it down. Then I just take the blank and line up the pivot points. Now I'm ready to cut. Cool thing about this jig is that you can slide the piece into the blade and then start rotating. This will end up with a really close to perfect circle that has no flat spots. And it's also very low profile, which is good for big bowl blanks like these, because the jig doesn't waste a lot of the bandsaw cutting capacity. Now you can take off the other part, and you have a perfectly prepared bowl blank. One thing to mention is that you need a really good and really sharp blade for this to work properly. And this blade should be suited for wet wood, because you really don't want to get stuck with the blade in this wood thickness. The blade I'm using is especially designed for cutting up wet wood. It has an extremely aggressive tooth setting to provide more space for the blade, but it also means that it has a thicker saw curve, and so you need a reasonably powerful bandsaw to operate this blade. But if you have all of that, you can cut out really nice circles, and
You also have a hole right in the center, so you could use a screw chuck to mount it on the lathe and it would be not wobbling at all. Except I can't use mine because my one is way too weak for this bolt size.
You should also have a look on how the blade tracks as you're cutting, because as you rotate the piece the grain direction is changing constantly, and as the grain changes the blade behaves differently and tends to move more to the right when you're cutting cross grain and more to the left when cutting long grain. If the blade is too dull, it will move too much and bow into the piece, which causes heat and reduces the blade's lifetime. And I also like to keep the blade clean while I'm doing this work. It probably looks very simple in the video, but I had a lot of fails with cutting bowl blanks because of the wrong blade or wrong pivot point position, until I got it to this state where it's working great. But in most cases, if it's not working, it's because the blade is not sharp enough. I would say that the Bandsaw made a pretty good job in cutting out all these bowl blanks. And for some reason, the offcuts look even more interesting than the pieces itself. And because I already have 2 videos that show the turning process very well, I am just going to go over this one pretty quickly. The piece is mounted with a faceplate and I turn the outside roughly to shape and then create a tenon or mortise for the chuck. Then I mount it in reverse with the chuck to hollow out the inside while leaving the walls about 1/10 of the bowl diameter thick. Finally, I give them a candle wax coating to seal the end grain and prevent cracks during the drying process. And I also had an accident with this bowl, unfortunately not on camera, and it happened because the mortise I made for the chuck wasn't strong enough. Part of the wood here was a little bit rotten. I thought it would be strong enough, but in fact it wasn't. And it's really unfortunate because this bowl has the nicest figure of all of them. I hope I can still make something out of it. At least I will try. And that's pretty much it for this one. As I still have a lot of turning to do, I want to get this done quickly so I can start on the next project video. So I think I'm gonna end the video now.